So g'day everyone, welcome back to another Bush Creek fly tying tutorial. So in this video what we're doing is we're tying up this, which is my knot peccary and partridge. So this is essentially a poor man's peccary substitute, and it's pretty easy to tie, and it does the trick. It looks pretty effective, and it sort of performs well. So without further ado, we'll get on into the actual tying of the pattern itself. So the hook I'm using for this is a Dahuku pupa hook in size 14, and I'm just adding a tungsten countersunk bead, just a matte coloured countersunk bead. This one's probably in about the 3mm mark, and but you can sort of clearly vary the size of the bead for whatever you happen to be tying. The body of this fly comprises of this stuff, which is woolly nylon. Overlocker thread, so it's nylon overlocker thread. I just decant it off onto a spool. The other substitute you could use is uni stretch. I like this. This is a bit thinner, so it's a little bit easier to get, a little bit more accurate. So that's the body, and we just use markers to colour that up. So to start with, I'm going to catch on behind the bead with a few turns, and then trim away this waste piece, and then trying to keep the thread relatively flat, I'm just going to go backwards and forwards and start to build up a taper. Now, I don't want to get too thick behind the bead because I need to hackle it. So when I build up the taper, I'm going to stop short of the actual bead, and I'll probably only come up a turn or two behind the bead, about that position there, and then continue to build up the taper and just bring in that body down around the shank till you get to a point where you feel you're happy with the length of the body, and it's entirely up to you. And then last turn, you really want to try and flatten out that thread so you get a nice flat surface to bring the final wrap onto. Right, so that's that'll do for the length of the body there. So the marking and how I'm going to do markers, I'm just using a selection of markers. So I'm using a Graphic Pro Duo in 98. Turn it up the right way, 98 chestnut brown. I'm using a Copic marker, and that's a E29 in burnt umber, and I'm using another Copic marker, and that's E35 in chamois. But I mean, you could go and find any colours that you think are going to work for you in that respect. So to do the body, it's pretty straightforward. All I'm doing is I've got the thread a little bit flat. You don't want too much tension on it because using the markers on it, this will bleed the thread out. So I'm going to come in, first of all, I'm going to come in with this chestnut brown, and right down here at the base, I'm going to dab in about a 5mm patch of the dark brown, or the chestnut brown. Then I'm going to take the chamois, and I'm going to come up the thread about a centimetre, and I'm going to do another sort of 5mm or so dab of the chestnut brown, and then taking the burnt umber, I'm going to come up another centimetre or so, and then do another 5mm mark of the burnt umber. Now, you don't have to be terribly circumspect, and you can play around a little bit with your colours and the distances between them. So once I let that dry off a little bit, I'm just going to come in and start doing the flat turns, bringing it forward. And, if you get little gaps in there, that doesn't matter. I mean, you're trying, for the most part, to sort of emulate a natural material, and, it's going to have some variation in there. So what I might do is I might come in with this other marker here and just do a little bit more here and bring it forward. Just change the shading a bit till I get back to just behind the bead, and then come in with my whip finisher and do a couple of turns to whip finish. Take up the tension here, and then trim away the waste piece. So that's the body done, and basically from here, what you do is give it a hit of UV resin, and just cure that off. And what you should find with using the stretch materials, that you'll get a little bit of show through from behind the thread, and it'll darken up a little bit. And so once it's done and you've hit it with the UV, you'll end up with something that looks a little bit like this. And you can see how the sort of colours blend together and you get this variation in material colours, which sort of starts to emulate the peccary. Right, to finish the fly, I'm going to come in with some fine, strong thread. So I'm just using Simplify Nano Silk, and I'm going to catch that in directly behind the bead with a few turns, lock that down, and then trim away the waste. Advance that back up just as it starts to come back up onto the onto what you covered with UV, and then I'm going to come in with my Hackle and look to do the Hackle. So it's just Partridge, just a Partridge back. You can decide yourself how long you want the fibres to be. You probably really only need a turn or two of the fibres, so you don't have to heavily hackle this. So I've just got a Partridge hackle here that I've just tidied up and given myself a turn or two of the fibres like this, and then I'm just going to trim away this point and create myself a little tag to tie in with. I'm just going to come in and tie this in 2 or 3 turns behind the bead, and then capturing the stem, drawing the fibres back. I'm just going to do this, basically use up this hackle, which gives me about a turn or so, and then capture in the stem, a couple of turns, and then another turn just to lock it in place. Take the scissors, trim away the stem, and then to finish the fly, I'm using some possum tail, dark brown, black possum tail, really coarse fibres here, and you don't need a lot, and it's really just sort of the scrap ends of stuff we've been tying, but it's nice and dark and black and fibrous. You don't need a lot of this. You just need a pinch or two of the sort of coarser fibres, just to create a fairly tight sort of dubbing loop. And all we're going to do here is just use that to sort of provide a bit of a collar on the fly, tidy up the front end, and then encourage these fibres to draw backwards. 2 or 3 turns there, and then come in with a whip finish, 2, 3 turns on the whip finish behind the bead, take out the tension, and then another couple just to be sure. And then I can trim away my thread, and then I can come in and tie that one. I might trim away some of these bigger fibres. Just brush out that partridge a little bit, and there you have it. So that's the knot peccary and partridge. As I said, it's a relatively easy fly to tie, and it's pretty effective. That colour variation provides a nice contrast in the body, and saves you having to use the peccary. You can punch out a whole bunch of these. So anyway, thanks for watching. If you try it and it works for you, let me know. Otherwise, tight lines.